I'm a 36-year-old who got kicked out of the family business my father established just 8 months ago. I've been a part of this business for almost 12 years. It's a jewelry business started by my grandfather on my father's side. It was passed down to my father, and I always expected it would come to me next. After all, I'm the oldest sister and have always shown a keen interest in the business since my teenage years. My dad always told me that I would take over the business because my sister, who's 33, never seemed interested in having a career. She just wanted to get married and have a family. So it was always taken for granted that I'd be the heir, even though there was no formal documentation. I served as my dad's personal assistant for 12 years. I even quit my first job after 2 years because I didn't want to seem entitled and wanted to gain some genuine work experience before working with my father. But I left because my dad wanted me to join him. Despite everything I had done, I still got kicked out in favor of my sister and her ridiculously rich fiancé. My sister hadn't even been part of the family for the past 15 years. She made some bad decisions, and my parents cut her out right after she turned 18. She announced she wouldn't go to college and wanted to explore and find herself. This didn't sit well with my parents, and they gave her an ultimatum: go to college or leave. She chose to leave and moved in with her boyfriend at the time. That didn't last long, and they broke up within 6 months. She then showed up at our doorstep, asking to be let back into the family. Before my sister left, she said awful things to my parents, like how she didn't need them anymore, was better off without our family, and that we weren't good enough for her boyfriend. They broke up within 6 months, and then she showed up at our doorstep asking to be let back into the family. She had really insulted and humiliated us before she left, comparing us unfavorably to her boyfriend's financially better-off family. When she came back, my dad told her that the conditions he had set still stood. She had to agree to go to college and get a degree, no matter what she chose, or she could stay out. My sister tried to argue and fight her way back in, but my dad was adamant. She left again, saying she would never come back. For the next 15 years, we only saw her at family events. We learned about her life updates from other relatives because she refused to speak to us. My mom and I tried to contact her several times, but since we were on good terms with my dad, she refused to speak to us as well. She was really proud and stuck to her words. She didn't come back until my dad tried to reestablish contact with her himself. She figured out her life on her own, though not as expected. She didn't go to college but lived with a friend, got a job, and funded her own life. Over time, she matured a lot. She switched jobs frequently, but for the past couple of years, she worked at an advertising agency. Our relatives kept us updated about her. About a year ago, my dad fell dangerously ill with heart problems, and we thought we might lose him. The cardiologist said it didn't look good unless he made serious lifestyle changes. During this time, my dad decided to contact my sister and end the bad blood between them. Because she had grown up considerably, she finally decided to come back and be part of the family again. When she visited us, she came alone. We didn't talk much about her life because we were busy reminiscing about the past. She didn't make it all about herself, so we didn't learn much about her personal life. We knew about her professional life through our relatives, but not much else. She seemed happy to be back, and we were all focused on the reconciliation between father and daughter. It was a very emotional reunion, and I was happy about it, not knowing what was to come. When she visited us a second time, she brought along her fiancé, which was a huge shock to us. She told us she had been dating him for 3 years, and they recently got engaged. Nobody else in the family knew about it, so we hadn't found out either. She knew about our father's health issues from our relatives, but didn't know how serious it was, which is why she hadn't visited sooner. She thought it wasn't appropriate to announce the engagement at the time, so she kept it private. But now she believed it was time to introduce him to the family, so she brought him along. He seemed like a nice guy, and I could tell he was financially well off since his clothes, watch, and shoes were all expensive. I was happy for my sister because she was finally with the kind of guy she wanted, someone financially stable who knew what he wanted in life and had his future sorted out. After talking to both of them, we learned that her fiancé, like her first boyfriend, was also the son of a wealthy man who ran a chain of fast food restaurants. But unlike her first boyfriend, this guy seemed serious about her, and we could tell they were really in love. I was genuinely happy for her and congratulated them both. I never thought my father or even my sister and her fiancé would do what they did next. About 3 weeks after meeting them, my father suddenly decided it would be best if they took over our business. One morning he called me and asked me to come home because he wanted to talk. I was at work at the time, managing everything since my dad's heart health had declined, and I was basically running the business. He hadn't officially retired yet, but I knew it would happen at some point. I was confident that I would step up as CEO. That day changed everything. My sister and her fiancé weren't there when I arrived, but my parents were, and they looked grim. After some small talk, my dad delivered the crushing news. I thought he was joking, but when I realized he was serious, I couldn't believe it. When I asked why he would make such a decision after just 3 weeks, he told me he had his reasons and refused to explain. After considerable arguing, he finally said he believed they would be more capable than I was. He also thought it could be a welcome gift to bring them back into the family since they were getting married soon. I tried to convince him this was a horrible idea, that a wedding gift didn't need to be as big as an entire business. I reminded him he had always led me to believe I would inherit it. I had built my whole life around this fact, and now he was taking it away to give to people who had been absent for 15 years. I suggested making us partners, trying to negotiate because this was my future, but he was firm in his belief. He thought my sister's fiancé, whose father had built his own business, would expand our jewelry business faster than I could. I begged for one chance, but he wouldn't listen. I was heartbroken, not just because I was losing something so big, but because I had devoted 12 years of my life to this and still hadn't earned my father's respect. If he respected my work and effort, he wouldn't have kicked me out. That day, I decided to cut all ties with my family. I had nothing left to say to them. I expected my sister to fight for me, but she let me down by accepting their so-called wedding gift, which was my life's work. She always knew I wanted to take over the family business once my dad retired. I had talked about it nonstop since I was 13. When she accepted the wedding gift, she was taking my dreams as her own. She made a post on social media to thank our parents and announced her engagement. After that, nobody from the family reached out to me, which was the most hurtful part. They didn't seem to care about me. The day I left my father's house, they stopped speaking to me, and I felt used, like 12 years of my life had gone to waste. I was thankful I had enough savings to fall back on. For a couple of months, I did nothing and tried to put my life back together. That was 8 months ago. I started therapy because I was spiraling into depression and needed help. I blocked my sister and told my relatives I didn't want to hear anything about them. I requested not to be told anything about my family, no matter how big it seemed, because I didn't want to know. They respected my wishes and kept everything secret, so I had no idea that my dad's health had been steadily deteriorating. My sister and her fiancé didn't care at all. I found out about this only a week ago when my dad called to tell me he was in the hospital after suffering a cardiac arrest. He used someone else's phone because I had blocked his number, and honestly, I felt guilty. But then I remembered what he did to me 8 months ago, and the guilt lessened. When he called and said he was suffering, I told him I'd be right there. I left everything and went to the hospital. My mom and dad were there, but my sister and her fiancé were nowhere to be found. I was confused since they were running the family business now. I couldn't help but ask about my sister and her fiancé. My dad, with great disappointment, told me they were too busy to visit him. I found that shocking because, having run the business for 12 years, I knew it was lucrative and mostly operated on its own. Unless there was a major crisis, we didn't need to be there all the time. When I asked if they had visited at all since the heart attack, he said they hadn't. They only texted back saying they were too busy and would visit once he was discharged. This was shocking to me, and I could see my dad realized he had made a grave mistake by handing over the business to them. He told me he felt guilty and regretful for kicking me out despite all my hard work and wanted to make things right. He realized they didn't care about him the way he cared about them. This wasn't even the first time they refused to show up for him. Since they took over the business, they visited less and less, always claiming to be too busy. He knew that nobody was so busy they couldn't take an hour from their day, especially since they lived just a couple of blocks away. He never said anything about it, but now they had crossed the line, and he couldn't take their disrespect anymore. He wanted to take his company back and give it to the person who actually deserved it. We discussed this in the hospital room, and he invited me back into the business. I was overjoyed. He apologized for everything, and though I'm not completely over it, I forgave him because getting back what I deserved was most important. The problem now is that he had this conversation with my sister too, telling her he wanted her to step away. He realized that despite his care, she had never been there for him, and he couldn't tolerate the disrespect. He wanted his company back to give it to the rightful person. Unsurprisingly, my sister is upset and blames me. She called me this morning, accusing me of being a horrible person and doing something cruel to her. I don't understand why she's being so crazy about it. I feel like there's something we don't know, but she's acting like she's lost everything and it's all my fault. The truth is, it's not my fault that my sister didn't visit our dad in the hospital. A cardiac arrest is a big deal, and she could have taken time off work to see him. She was selfish, and now I'm getting what I deserved from the start. 8 months ago, she had no problem accepting a gift she knew she didn't deserve. So why should I turn my back on something that rightfully belongs to me? She's pretty torn up about it, and I tried to console her, but she hung up on me. Now I'm wondering if I'm the bad guy because it seems like I always have to take the fall. Am I the asshole for allowing my father to ask my sister and her fiancé to step out of the family business so I can take over? Update 1. Thank you all so much for the response to my post. I kind of knew I didn't deserve the flack from my sister, but hearing it from you guys made me believe it even more. If even strangers think I deserve the business, then I have nothing more to say in my defense. It has been a couple of days since my last conversation with my sister, and I haven't heard back from her yet. She hasn't blocked me, so that's a good sign. I have a feeling there's more to this than she's telling us. I don't think anyone with a rich fiancé would act this way over losing our business. I suspect her fiancé and his family aren't doing well financially. From what I've heard, his dad's company has been facing losses for the past year. I think they wanted to take over our family business as a safety net. Some of you asked about this in the comments, but I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was relevant. Now I believe it is. My sister's reaction to being asked to step out of the business was extreme, given her fiancé's supposed wealth. Something doesn't add up, and I think she'll eventually tell us the truth. We're lucky my dad didn't sign any contracts handing over the business to my sister and her fiancé. He was still the CEO, and they were just working under him in my old position. He was training them to take over, but that's not happening now. My dad told me that my sister is very upset, but his priority is signing everything over to me. He's already talking to a lawyer to formalize it, and I'll be taking over soon. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been a couple of weeks since my last post, and I have exciting news. I am officially the new CEO of my dad's jewelry business. The handover is complete, and I'm in charge now. It feels so good to say that. There were some delays because of my sister, but everything is finalized now. As for my sister, she's not happy about any of this. My theory was correct. My sister and her fiancé were trying to sneak into our family business as a backup plan for when her fiancé's father let go of his company. My sister planted the idea in my father's head to welcome them back by handing over the business to his future son-in-law, and unfortunately he fell for it. I recently discovered all of this after reconnecting with my father. He admitted he wasn't thinking straight and got greedy, believing a man from an established business family would handle everything better than I would. He had planned to keep me in my current position, but when I insisted on being the head, he lost his temper, leading to these miserable 8 months for both of us. Thankfully, he came to his senses in time, and we avoided a huge disaster. The credibility of my sister's fiancé and his father in the market is now zero. I had heard rumors about his father's business being on the verge of shutting down, but I didn't believe them. Neither my dad nor I reached out to each other, which was foolish. My sister has since confessed and set her ego aside to speak to me. She reached out just before I was finalized as CEO, telling me they desperately needed jobs because her fiancé's dad might not hold out much longer. She asked for help, and I told her I would think about it. I don't have an issue with hiring them, but I will never be able to trust them again, knowing their original intentions. I told her to give me some time, and she agreed, but I don't know what to do. Update 3. I've decided not to hire my sister and her fiancé. This may seem selfish to some, but I can't trust them. When my dad offered them the company, they accepted without reaching out to me for 8 months. They showed zero compassion or empathy for anyone but themselves. I don't want people like that around me or working for me. So I told my sister I couldn't help her. She didn't take it well and threw a tantrum in my office, accusing me of being heartless and selfish. She said she regretted letting me have the company back, which was weird because it was my father's decision, not hers. She acted as if she did me a huge favor, which was ridiculous. Her statement annoyed me, so I told her she never did me any favors and that it was stupid to expect me to help her now. She refused to leave and kept screaming at me, undermining me. I decided to call the police to have her escorted out because I couldn't deal with the drama. I'm already busy with work and don't need this. When the cops showed up, she left without much to say. It's been a few days since then, and we haven't heard back from her. I'd assume she'll leave us alone, and if not, I'm prepared to get a